Hi, John.
Hey, Lucas.
How's life?
Not too bad, actually.
So, I know you mainly as my most renowned blockchain crypto expert. You can say esteemed maybe as well. But you are also past worked in tech consulting, Facebook for many years in New York, and a successful serial entrepreneur. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Is there anything I forgot in that?
That's pretty much it. That's my career. Tech, entrepreneurship, blockchain, crypto, social media, consulting, different types.
So something I thought about is that which kind of factors influences your decision when you are considering starting or launching a new company in any way?
Yes, so that is a very interesting debate because it depends on the individual, of course. I have my own particular criteria, which changes every time I start a business. I think about what worked, what didn't work, and then that helps me evolve my criteria over time. The criteria I'm thinking about at the moment is there's kind of two things that I'm looking for. One is that the business has to employ some kind of leverage. If you want high returns, it depends what you want from the business. People have different goals. Some people want the business to just pay the bills. Other people want to try and become a billionaire, whatever. Depending on the goals, there's different ways to go about it. Now, I want high returns, so the first thing I look for is leverage. So
is that your main, like, when you are thinking about starting a company, you want high returns? That's like this is what you're going for?
Yes, high returns. Yeah.
That makes it easier to make a decision.
So high returns. So I want the time and money and energy I've invested to come back to me. And therefore, I'm very keen on this idea of leverage. Sure. So leverage is the idea of having the output of a business being disproportionate to the input. So if I put in 1 unit of effort, I should get, not just, 1 unit of output, I should get maybe 2 or 3. Or then if I put in 2 units of effort, I should get 10 or 20 out, right? It should be a disproportionate reward for the effort. Now, there's only a few businesses that actually allow you to do that pretty consistently over time. There's 3 that I kind of look at.
Like so business or business models, or how you?
You can say, you'll see when I dig in. So there's 3 things that you want to try to employ. So there's financial leverage, there's software leverage, and there's what I call media leverage. I'll discuss them quickly. Financial leverage, that's businesses that use usually other people's money or loans or some kind of financial engineering to go faster. So typical example would be a venture capital type business where you raise outside money from investors. That's financial leverage, using other people's money to help accelerate your growth. Or it could be a regular high street business selling cakes, and you take a loan from the bank to help you have some leverage in your business so you can go fast again. That's financial leverage. There's software leverage. So software is a wonderful creation because it allows you to put in 1 unit of effort and get multiple returns. So software can serve people 24/7, 365, more than a human can. Therefore, you have leverage. And there's what I call media leverage. This is the idea of essentially doing something once, but being able to gain from it multiple times. So it's similar to software, but a bit different. It's more brand focused. It's more like, for example, a print newspaper. That's media leverage.
Can that exist? Okay, I was just wondering if media leverage could exist without software, but as you said yourself, you have printed. It could also be watched by multiple people.
Yeah, like a newspaper, exactly. Sure. Yeah. And there once upon a time that did involve software.
Yes. Once upon a time.
Okay. So usually it's information type businesses. So that's the first thing. Does the business have this kind of leverage? And then second, is it aligned with my skills, my network, my connection? What kind of unique advantage do I have to set up this business? Usually when I've tried to do businesses where I had no unique advantage, usually it's very, very difficult because it takes at least maybe up to 2 years before you actually know the secrets of the industry, of the business. Whereas if you already know them, you can save yourself a lot of time and effort. You just go straight to the gold. So what's my unique advantage? Does the business have any kind of, leverage to it? That's what I generally look for with businesses.
Okay. So But I guess you didn't know this in the beginning, right? When you tried being an entrepreneur or something.
Absolutely not. I did not know that at all.
So it was more of a jump into it and see kind of what happened, what came out of it.
Exactly. You have to learn iteratively. And that's what I've done over the years. And, the first business was a dismal failure. It lasted 8-9 months or so. Lost the money I put into it. And that was when I learned my first set of lessons and just been learning ever since then. Obviously, it's cheaper to learn from other people than yourself. So try and emphasize that.
That's true. So what was the first business that you...
First business I set up was an online newspaper, effectively. It was like a citizen journalism online newspaper where people could write articles about news stories of the day, write their opinion. So it's this idea of people-centered journalism. It was a little bit of a fad back then in 2006, 7, 8, but it was kind of at the beginning of this, I guess, user-generated content wave that later became, things like YouTube and Facebook and like WordPress and these other mediums.
Was it? When did you say it was?
This was in 2007. I started it. 2007, 2008.
Okay. So it was normal also for media to go online at that point. I didn't even know when that really began. When all media became...
Oh, no, that started much earlier. I mean, I started getting, I guess, videos online in the mid to late. You could even stream, but it was just very difficult in 2000. It was just very slow. You could even stream some video, I think, but it was just painfully slow and not very user-friendly.
So why did you decide for that to be your first one? Did you... Because that's always interesting. Why do you, when somebody starts up something, there's always I think it's difficult to pinpoint that what it really was that made them do that. It could also just be sheer luck. Sometimes it was because of a unique advantages they saw or how to leverage or...
I think I saw there was a company in South Korea that was very successful doing something like this. And I thought, why don't I try to do the same thing in the West? So I think that was the basic idea of it. They were very successful. I was not.
But there are a lot of businesses that uses this business model of saying, okay, this works here, let's do the same here, right?
Yeah. Maybe I just wasn't good enough. That's also could be a factor.
I think it's what they call rocket internet, you know?
The German guys, yeah.
And what they do is just they copy businesses, right? And then they employ them in Middle East Asia or upcoming countries.
Copying is a very, very good strategy in business, to be honest, because it avoids a lot of the pain of failing from innovation. I think most businesses, probably 80% of what you're doing should just be copying what already works, and maybe only 20%, even less, 10%, you should be trying to really push the innovation. Like when you start up a new business, you don't have to create a whole new hiring process, a whole new legal process, a whole new legal entity. You don't have all the mechanics be brand new innovations. You just focus on what's the one thing that will make a huge difference to the end customers.
And that should be the only original part, really, to all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think innovation is the focus of business.
Sure.
But innovation usually leads to, or can, I should say, not usually, can lead to great businesses.
No, I think that's true for sure, that great innovation, then you can create great business, but people that often start up a new business or they go into a certain business, they probably don't go into it because they just want to innovate. It's not like the driving force. Do you think there is one more or less universal? Is profit, is the monetary reward the primary driving force of starting new businesses?
Different people have different motivations. What you'll come to find the longer you're in business is that actually the prime motivation is probably sustainability. And that usually requires, the idea that you could exist forever, or you could exist for a long time. Entrepreneurs usually like entrepreneuring. So therefore their goal really is to keep being an entrepreneur. And therefore the dream, of course, would be for the business to last their lifetime. If they like being in the business, which many entrepreneurs do. But that's difficult. Profit helps with the sustainability, obviously. Sure.
And I remember back in I studied entrepreneurship and innovation at CBS, and we had this course about called sustainable entrepreneurship, but sustainable in the sense that I think called social entrepreneurship, where you wanna provide something good to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big discussion about if you are a social entrepreneur, if you are trying to create a company that helps somebody in need or that does something good, then do you also want to be sustainable in the sense that you generate enough profit to keep the venture lasting? Because can you both like give aid to people in need but also make money of it? Because if you don't make money of this, then it'll die out. It cannot continue.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only
That's
that's like a very interesting where's the line? When do you want to be sustainable and when not?
Well, these kind of social enterprises, they've been around for a long time. The one that I think is probably most well known, it's not even really a social enterprise, but maybe you could consider it, is Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. So Kickstarter is a public benefit company, which is a special designation in the US for companies that do not only exist for the benefit of shareholders, but also for all stakeholders, employees, people in the community, and so forth. So there are companies out there like Kickstarter who have this social element to them. I think there's others as well. Etsy, I think, is another one in the US. But these companies, you need to be profitable for the sustainability typically. And let's not forget, we live on an economic planet, and the incentives that drive, let's say, money making, quote unquote, are very strong in the human psyche. Mostly because money is used as a mechanism for survival, for taking care of people's families. It's crucial.
It's crucial for living. Yeah, you can't really. We are in an economic world in society, so you got to use what you have in that.
Absolutely.
So when did you start to venture more into the blockchain, crypto kind of world?
It wasn't too long ago, although in the industry I feel like I've been around a while now. But it would have been in early-ish 2017. Of course, I heard about Bitcoin before. I, had some Bitcoin, but I wasn't really into it until about early-ish 2017. It was a friend who told me to take a second look at this thing.
Yeah, I had some friends as well that told me in the beginning really to buy this thing, Ethereum, just buy one, I wish I had bought more when I look back at it now. But okay, so early 2017, did you begin your first venture? Was that revolving around the ICOs, the initial coin offerings?
So it was a blockchain marketing company, and it was doing different things. I worked with some projects. I worked with an event company, a handful of other type of blockchain crypto companies, and helping them with their marketing. A friend of mine had a business in the industry. He had some leads. He realized that people needed some marketing help, and so we partnered to create this marketing business. It was just a marketing business working with startups in the blockchain ecosystem.
And so not only ICO, just in general marketing. Okay, yeah, because I guess these companies, in the beginning, I think just the buzzword of blockchain in itself might have been a marketing factor you can use, right?
The language has been abused for people to, raise money, to hire people, to do untold things. Of course, it's used as a mechanism to get what people want. It's just like many words are used throughout industry, all these buzzwords in tech especially, the cloud is another one, AI, quantum computing.
AI is a big one, I believe. AI, everything's AI.
Machine learning. Yeah, everyone they throw out these buzzwords. It's just become like that.
So what was the leverage that you had in starting this thing up? Did you have a specific background with marketing that made you?
Yeah, so I previously worked in marketing at Facebook, so I had unique knowledge of how to do digital marketing. Sure. I'm very familiar with all the platforms, what works, what doesn't, what they cost, how easy it is to set up. So I was very familiar with that going into it. So I had some advantage. But there's many people who know digital marketing, so that's not enough. I didn't have any special software. Did I have financial leverage? Well, let's unpack this. My friend had a business. as I said, that had leads, and he was introducing them to me, and we set up this company. So I guess you could say, in a weird way, convoluted way, I had some kind of financial leverage because my cost to acquire a customer would have been much less than other marketing firms, because effectively my friend was introducing me to people. He was a partner in the business, but essentially introducing me to people that he had worked with in his other business. And so I was getting quote unquote free leads. So I didn't have to market or spend a lot of time and energy acquiring customers, which most businesses do. And so that means that my cost to acquire customers was virtually zero, except for my time. And so that made the business, have a strong start.
So how's it going now with the marketing for blockchain companies? It had a really peak. Was it around 2017? It had the biggest, and now it's going down.
Blockchain is a fantastic industry because you learn so much so quickly and so much happens so fast. When people ask me about blockchain, it's important to go back to the fundamentals of what this technology is trying to do. And what it's trying to do is effectively remove intermediaries and have a framework where trust is minimized. You don't have to rely on third parties in order to get things done effectively. And so what the end result really of this is a fairer, more transparent system for consumers. That's what this technology is trying to do. What's unique about this industry is that there's a price that's attached to different networks. This is very unique. Imagine from day one, Facebook had a price, or from day one, the fax machine had a price, or the day one, the internet had a price. It's very weird to think about it this way, but imagine what impact that would have. Think about the ups and downs people thought about the internet, or I could even say Facebook because I worked there. Mm-hmm. When something's private or not commercialized or doesn't have a price on it, it's easy to think that it was a smooth sail, up and to the right, and the business was a success. But actually, success doesn't work like that. It's convoluted. It goes up and down, slowly but surely, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a little bit of a challenge. And that's what blockchain is going through now. It's trying to find the best applications for the technology.
You have to elaborate. What do you mean by it has a price on it?
So the fact that you can go and see that Bitcoin has a price or Ethereum has a price, and you can buy the token.
Sure.
So that creates this kind of more of a manic boom and bust mentality.
From day one, you go in and see this blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum blockchain, is this much worth?
Exactly. And of course, it leads to speculation. It leads to, emotional, irrational behavior, gambling, speculating, whatever, investing, whatever word you want to use. Mm-hmm. This very same thing would have happened if it was the internet or any other technology, but they just didn't have a price on it. There was no price on it. But
all public listed companies now that are stock exchange, they have a price to them in the same way, right? Yeah, sure, okay. So blockchain, not blockchain companies, cryptocurrency companies, right?
Yeah, or networks.
Or networks, cryptocurrency networks have a price from the beginning.
Yeah.
True.
And so that creates different dynamics. It creates the opportunity, it creates many weird consequences, It creates the opportunity for people to get rich quick, which you can't really with most startups. Most startups, you've got a liquid stock. No one's going to buy it from you until like year 7, 8, or 9 into it. So there's nothing you can do except focus on building the business. Whereas in crypto, because it has a price on day one, in theory, you could just be great at marketing, pump the price, sell it after 1 year, even though the business has not produced any lasting value. But that's possible because you're liquid, quote unquote, from day one.
Yeah, okay.
So it creates these different dynamics. It also creates a dynamic where, because people can get very depressive about blockchain and crypto, that you can buy assets for cheap, or for good value, because it has this kind of, let's say, manic depressive slant to it.
What do you mean? Why does it have a depressive?
Manic depressive. I mean, it's just because it's up and down. It's
sure.
Like it's
extremely volatile.
Exactly.
Yeah, true. So it's like you can kind of look at it as a startup where everybody can, because normally you have to wait until a company reaches a certain size and then they do an IPO, then become public listed, and then you can buy stocks in the company. But here you can buy stocks from the get-go, really. Mm-hmm. I guess that for all crypto networks that you can go in and buy, unless they're closed, of course.
Yeah, pretty much all of them, the ones that want to be public networks at least. It's not the same for a publicly listed company. Most publicly listed companies, at least startups, the venture capital ones that you hear about, like Uber or Facebook, they were private for 8, 9, 10 years beforehand so they could build a business. People were prepared years in advance that a stock listing was happening and they know how to manage this. But I know because I've had the opportunity to work at publicly listed companies. I know that the employees, they look at the stock price like very frequently because that's what they're thinking about. This is my net worth. I care about it.
Sure.
So, and it's a huge distraction. But when you're not public, then you don't think about that.
But is it true that the company, then the marketing company for blockchain companies, was specialized around the ICO, which is the beginning of creating a company, right?
Yeah, well, I work.
Can you break it down, maybe like an ICO, what it is for people that are not that into this terminology?
Yeah, so the best way is to phrase it is the terminology keeps changing. First, it was initial coin offering, it's been token sale, token generation event, initial exchange offering. Different words have been used over the time. But essentially what it is a crypto network that issues a token. Sometimes they sell the token to the public to help bootstrap or, you can effectively say kind of fund the network in a way. And in order to attract investors or in order to attract users, actually it's mostly about getting people to ultimately use the product long term. They do some marketing, maybe they do some interviews with people, or they do some advertising, or they build a website. So all these different marketing techniques we help people with.
Okay. Has it completely stopped now, this ICO?
No, there's still IOs that happen. Well, obviously the terminology now keeps changing.
Sure.
But no, they're still happening. So not long ago, there's a big one for a company called, I guess you could call it, the name is Algorand. It's quite a popular one recently. I think they raised $70 million. And they were backed by, some of the world's most famous and well-known venture capitalists. And so people are still doing it, but it's less. There's definitely the volume has gone down considerably since 2017, early 18.
So now it's maybe more about this, the idea behind it, or the tokenization of whatever it might be, right? That is what people are doing more now.
There's a famous saying in technology circles, which is that nothing good ever happened without a bubble. So there was the railway bubble, there was the car bubble. Once upon a time, there was like 500 car companies, We had the tech bubble. Basically what happens is that usually when there's a huge technological shift, we need lots of irrational investors throwing their money at it in order for these crazy ideas to get funded. And what happens is that at the end of it, you end up with companies like an Amazon or an eBay or PayPal and such like that come from the end of it. And that's when we get these amazing technologies that change civilization. But there's never been a huge technological shift without a speculative bubble, except for maybe the space race. But that was kind of a different situation. They were not private investors in the space race.
Sure. Yeah, because I guess a lot of us takes for granted now that, like in the beginning of like the what we call the World Wide Web nowadays, they're also competing for, it's like, should an HTML link, should that be like one-sided or should it be like double linked so everybody could see if you're linking to a page, or the HTTP, in the beginning there were all these different competitions about what should really be before it became what it is now.
Yeah, people are fascinated by these initial exchange offerings. Essentially, it's a fantastic innovation, but it also has some negative consequences.
The crypto blockchain aspect of it.
Just initial exchange offerings or coin offerings, or people selling a token and raising money.
Which basically is that you're launching a company, you have made a paper saying this is kind of what the company will be about. I need some money for the company, so I put it out before having anything, and everybody can now buy into my company, and I give them tokens, which can be seen like shares. But maybe you can also use these shares, these tokens, to buy other stuff, right?
To do something on the network.
Yeah, to do something on the network.
Technically, they're not shares. What's the best way to...
It's like a security?
It's basically... it's not a security. Most of them are not calling themselves securities. They're more like airline miles or something like that. Okay. They're like a token that you can use to do something on the network.
Sure.
So a good example, of course, let's take Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin a security? Well, now you get into the whole legal framework. Let's not do that. The most important thing is that Bitcoin allows someone to exchange value with someone else in a decentralized manner.
Yes.
a lot of these networks are trying to copy Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is by far of course, the most successful of all of these networks. And the one
successfully means that is what the most valuable, what most people use.
Exactly.
Not the best
most valuable.
But yeah, sure.
It's not always necessarily the most used, but it's the one that has become an asset, and there's a story and a narrative around it, which makes us believe it's going to be around for a very long time.
Sure. Also and you come from a marketing background. When people say blockchain, then a lot of people, oh, you mean Bitcoin? Like, no, not necessarily.
Well, the thing is, most things around blockchain, are science experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, some people say Bitcoin still is, but it's a very successful experiment so far.
Sure.
Let's put it like that. Unlike others, which really are science experiments. And this is why there's been controversy around these token sales or ICOs, is that people raising money, they're maybe not very good entrepreneurs or business people, but who's to say ahead of time whether or not they're good or not? They raise money, and then the incentives are misaligned because, let's say you raise $10 million, all of a sudden you're liquid, you've got tokens that you control, you could just sell them on the market if there's enough liquidity and make a few $1 million, right? They could do that without having launched the product or anything like that. So that the incentives are misaligned because there's no long-term value creation. So it creates the opportunity for people to pump and dump tokens,
yes,
rather than trying to build for the long term.
Because I guess you can compare it to maybe people that are confused. You can say it's the same as Kickstarter, Indiegogo, these crowdfunding platforms where you create something, you say, this is the concept of what I want to do. You make a 3D image of this is the product I want to have.
Exactly.
Give me some money, I'll create it for you guys.
Just like that, but there's a lot more money involved. So of course, when there's a lot more money involved, there's more at stake. You're more likely to attract unscrupulous people. But what's good about the innovation, of course, is projects that might otherwise have struggled to get funding can get funding. So some of these ideas can actually run. Mm-hmm. But in all startup investing, 90% of them go to zero. Sure. People know that.
But that's the startup world in general.
That's the startup world. Yeah. But of course, some people putting money into these projects, maybe they're gambling, or maybe they don't know the fact that 90% of startups go to zero, although, it's pretty public knowledge. So yeah, people will lose money. Some people might have even been scammed. Some people have definitely been scammed. But
do you think there's a percentage of scamming? Do you have to say a number of like?
I don't know. But I think actually people having been in this industry for a while, I think people. The thing is this word of scam is actually a very interesting one because it's often abused. Let's say a company raises 10 million and they're just incompetent. Mm-hmm. And then they pilfer the money away, they try and build a product, they can't build the product, and then they run out of money before anything launches. Is that a scam, or are they just incompetent? It's hard to know what the line is.
Sure. Did they do the best they could? Or, what was the intention before they went into it?
Well, I don't want to be an apologist for such people, but I'll just say that at least most of the people that I've come across have the greatest intentions, but what these people are trying to do is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. From a computer science perspective, from a business perspective. It's just hard to create a very successful business. A business that creates millions or billions in revenue is very hard, no matter what you're trying to do. So that's why most of these things fail, not because they're scams. I think it's because people trying to do things that are very difficult.
Okay.
At least the ones I come across.
Do you have some good examples to make it more tangible for people to understand what kind of businesses could this be that we're talking about?
In particular, what, like crypto businesses or?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really want to talk about crypto businesses as such because that's not the most interesting thing in crypto. The most interesting thing in crypto is Bitcoin, really. Bitcoin is not a business, it's a network. It's a store of value, it's a way for people to exchange value. It's extremely powerful because it cuts out lots of quote unquote middlemen from the exchanging of value. It's very difficult increasingly for me to give you money without a corporation being involved. Mm-hmm. Cash is our last thing and people are trying to kill cash. Now, if a corporation can see all my transactions, they can censure me. They could say, oh, hold on, we're going to block all of John's transactions. Is that fair or right? Why should the bank have the right to do that? So this is the problem with the systems that we've developed, is that we have these centralized institutions that have undue power and influence on two humans interacting.
So are you in favor of a completely, in that sense, non-regulated, centralized economic system? Banks, would you just let everything?
What, unregulated? No, of course not, because we need to protect people. People need to be educated. We just have a system that I don't think is really working for people long term.
Well,
Here's the thing with modern banking. Modern banking now is about scale. So the bigger the bank, usually the cheaper they can offer mortgages, the easier they can provide services. So everyone loved this initially, right? We all loved it. We're like, oh yeah, I can get a cheap mortgage, or it's easy to set up an account, or credit cards, I can get a low rate, etc. Or I can have a current account, checking account, doesn't cost any money. All great. And all of that becomes easier for banks to provide as they have scale. But the problem with scale is that it leads to an oligopolistic situation where only a few banks have all the control.
Sure.
So when you have a, oligopolistic situation, I can barely say that word.
It's a good word, man.
There's no competition. So that means there's less innovation.
But isn't this the case with every industry, that the few dominant players will take it all?
I think it's just
at some
human
point
nature that they will take advantage of customers, or not necessarily take advantage of customers. You just become lazy. Like, why stretch? Why take less money when you don't have to?
Sure.
And I think that just happens to any industry where there's only a few major players. Like, I'm sure the same is true in other industries, not just banking.
So I guess we can look at it. So the good thing about the crypto now is that at least it goes in and it competes again. It challenges the banks to maybe not be that lazy in that sense.
Well, competition is good for innovation, and I think these crypto networks is competition for banks in the long run. And so I'm sure that they will improve their services as a result in the long term, and that's good for consumers.
Sure. I think competition is always good for consumers. That's how I look at it.
Almost yes. Almost always yes. Not all the time, but almost always yes.
And I think so do you think that, because the major application of blockchain with Bitcoin as well is transaction, and I guess that with the internet, the World Wide Web, where we can really share information freely, that what we just need now to really is that we can also pay everybody. We can do the financial transactions.
Yes.
That's the next step to the World Wide Web.
It's a pain. Like when I meet my friends from another country and we go out for dinner and I need to send them money because we shared a bill, it's like impossible.
It's a pain.
It's like actually impossible. Of course, if you're just with friends who live in the same country and use the same bank, it's getting easier, but it's still not a great user experience.
No, I guess locally there are different ways of doing it, but still, it's based on the country specific.
Exactly.
Of how you can.
When you try to do these things internationally, send money abroad, have friends who are visiting you from abroad, it's difficult. And that's been a problem for me for sure, because I'm British, but I've lived in the US, I've lived of course in the UK, and I've lived in Denmark, and I've traveled around the world. So moving money around, I've hired people in Argentina. That was a pain to try and get money to Argentina. I've hired people who are in the US, have been in Eastern Europe, have been in America, have been in the Philippines. So now sending all these payments from around the world, it's difficult.
But have you been relying on any blockchain application to do these transactions? Like where right now does it work?
Well, sometimes I've paid people in crypto.
Enough?
Yeah,
Sure.
sometimes I send because it's just quicker.
It is.
There's an Australian person I was working with. I was like, hell no, I'm going to try and do this through the banking system. It's going to take, I don't know how long. I don't even like filling out all the forms. Even that's a bit of a pain in the ass.
But the problem right now with using crypto, I guess, is that if you want to get it out for the Danish currency, right? It's a transaction from whatever crypto you have to the normal money that you're using in that country, right? That's the biggest hurdle right now.
Of course, there's transaction fees. Also, banks and some regulators are antagonistic towards the crypto industry for numerous reasons. But and so that makes it especially difficult for people. It's hard for crypto companies even to access all the banking services regular businesses do.
Do you foresee what the future will be of where we'll land all this?
I have well, it's very hard to. I don't try to predict the future too much, but if there's any North Star, the North Star should be what's good for the average person long term. I don't think anyone thinks for the average person long term, the existing banking payment systems that we have are ideal. And I think the banks themselves know this. That's why they're trying to improve and innovate.
Also, right now with all the scandals that are coming forth with the banks in Denmark, it's could be
around the world. I mean, every week there's a new bank, a major bank in any part of the world that's paying some hefty fine for, rigging this or overcharging customers that, or it's pretty much a weekly occurrence that some bank that you know of is being fined.
Yeah, and maybe this is also why so how's the Bitcoin right now? It did increase a month ago. It's called a month ago. It really had a big spike, right? I've been following it closely lately.
Well, the Bitcoin price is the Bitcoin price. It'll do what it wants to do. It's hard to know what's going to happen with that. What people don't appreciate about Bitcoin still, even to this day, is that it's a network effect. Generally, the more people that know about Bitcoin, the more people use it, the more the price goes up. So in the long run, you just got to ask it. And of course, it has a diminishing supply. So the number of Bitcoins available goes down, or that's issued, let's say, from the system goes down every 4 years. The next event is in May 2020. So the amount of new Bitcoins available will go down. So basically, the supply of Bitcoins effectively goes down over time, and it's capped at 21 million coins.
Supply goes down and demand goes up. The more people that know of it, the more people want to buy it. So yeah, sure.
Exactly. And so you got to think, what's the value of Bitcoin? Bitcoin gives value because 1, it's easy to send around. 2, it allows you to opt out of the existing financial system. And 3, it can be used as a kind of store of value. So it's a way to kind of save money, a bit like gold, outside the existing financial system. But of course, most of this is speculation. We're speculating that Bitcoin will, let's say, become gold 2.0, even bigger than gold. Gold is worth about 7 trillion at the moment around the world. Maybe about 2 trillion of that is what people use for quote unquote savings. The rest is held by central governments, used for jewelry and other things, industrial uses and such. So let's say about 2 trillion. Bitcoin at the moment is worth about 200 billion. So
still some way to go.
But in a digital age, does it make sense to have digital gold instead of, as my friend likes to say, we go to Australia, we dig a hole, pull out all the gold, ship it across the world, dig another hole, put it back into it, called a vault. That's basically the gold industry.
It is kind of what it is, yeah. It's weird. Did you read about this asteroid that is going in, being now within reach of being able to study a bit? That has
gold deposits.
Like insane gold deposit and all these minerals. So like if it will reach Earth, like everybody will become billionaires instantly because there's so much in it.
Oh, not quite. But yeah, that's why maybe gold is not such a good store of value long term. But I think that's quite a hypothetical. It's going to be a while before we're mining asteroids.
Yeah. Probably not in our lifetime now. No, I'm just thinking that, so if there could be an event where we'll like mine asteroids, that something from the outside will completely reckon it because the supply just increases.
Of course, so then it wouldn't work.
So isn't there, because you say that the supply of Bitcoin, for example, is capped, but isn't it only capped until somebody finds a way to hack it or figure out to reverse that in some way, right? Nothing is completely immutable.
No, nothing has. There's no such thing as a perfect system.
So at some point there is. It could be the same as with this asteroid coming in, that somebody's able to completely destroy the system that everything is resting on, and then it's done.
I mean, the chance of Bitcoin going above 21 million coins is probably equal to the chance of Denmark becoming a fascist dictatorship. I mean, of course, it's not impossible. But it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. Sure. Maybe even the chance of being changed to above 21 million coins is even less than that. Thousands of people from around the world who run nodes effectively have to agree to change the code of Bitcoin. So can thousands of people agree on something? Of course they can. So it's not impossible, but it's part of the social contract of Bitcoin not to change that. So we have these social contracts in the world. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, are very strong. Some of them are very difficult to change, but some of them can obviously be changed a little bit. It's Constitution of the US. I think it has 18 amendments. So they had the Constitution. They've made 18 amendments over the last, what was it, almost over 200 years or so. So we'll see. We'll see. But these are smaller ones. They didn't like get rid of the whole Congress and, you know, putting a dictator in America, right?
Yeah.
So I think Bitcoin is something that people need to continue to take a look at.
Sure.
I think it's as powerful as, I think, maybe any technology I've ever seen in my entire career. I think it's, once you dig into it, you realize it's multifaceted, it's beautiful. It's...
You're talking about Bitcoin now specifically, because a lot of people say this about blockchain and they want to separate Bitcoin from blockchain because it's a blockchain.
It needs to be separated from blockchain. Blockchain and crypto is still mostly a science experiment. Bitcoin is, I don't think, is a science experiment anymore.
Okay, so this is the most established application of...
Exactly.
Okay, sure. That makes sense. So what's going to be next for you in the blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto world? Is there any...
Yeah,
been up to lately?
Yeah, so I'll continue running my consultancy and working with different projects and teams. I might partner with some companies or end up joining a larger company as well. That's something that I'm looking at the moment, and more on down the future. But yeah, I just staying heavily involved in this blockchain crypto industry. I think it's fascinating. I love technology and like finance. So actually this is a place where they two come together. And actually it quite meshes with politics and philosophy, if you're interested in that. Psychology as well is very much part of this. The incentives that align thousands of people around the world to cooperate on a network. I mean, that's pretty amazing. How many things like that exist in the world, where thousands of people from around the world collaborate on a project. It's not that common. So without it being a company, it's very rare. Or a nation, an international body.
So you're going to stay in Denmark for that? You've been living around the world, US, UK, now in Denmark.
Sure, I like Denmark. It's a great country.
Why do you live in Denmark, actually, if I may ask? Why do you just live here?
There's many reasons. Maybe we need a whole new episode for that one. Fundamentally, it's a good place to live. So that's why I'm here.
You talked about interested in philosophy, psychology before. So it's kind of a difficult question to ask or how to formulate it, but we can say, have you made some specific thoughts into what is your philosophy in life? What do you...
Oh, deep questions. How do you read philosophy? It's interesting, of course.
Do you read philosophy? Do you study philosophy? Like on a hobby base?
Yeah, most of it's political philosophy. Well, actually, that was earlier. Now it's...
Because I guess it started out a lot, with political philosophy.
But then you end up gravitating to things like Stoicism. So you might read some Marcus Aurelius or some Seneca and such, and then you start to follow that line of thought.
It is my favorite school of philosophy.
Well, it's definitely easier than some of that postmodernism, which could be a bit complicated.
I would say that, if I dare to say, but I'm as close to Stoic as I think is. No, I'm probably not. I probably was, but I consider myself Stoic in many ways. So
that's a good way to live. Philosophy of life is essentially that. I think the chances are when we die, and that's it. It'll just be like sleeping without dreaming. So therefore, your time on this planet, what do you want to do with it? Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I've, contemplating, the only thing that really creates lasting value in oneself when one is alive is having fun and creating value for other people. So doing right by other people and yourself having fun is pretty much, I think, a pretty good life philosophy. Have fun and do right by other people. And I think chances are you'll be all right.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be overcomplicated.
No, I don't think so either. But then, so to be the devil's advocate, so having fun, right? Mm. Then a lot of people say, well, then I should I should quit my job now. And I should just go out and lay on the beach and drink some mojitos all day long. Because that is fun, more fun.
Well, you got to think about what's fun for yourself today, what's fun for yourself a year from now, 6 months from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. You got to say, how do I do right by John, Lucas, tomorrow? But also, 20, 30 years from now. So if I want to do right by John tomorrow, I'll go to bed early. That's fine. If I want to do right by John 20, 30 years from now, I'll go for a run, because I know if I build that habit of running, then I'll be running years from now, and that will hopefully keep me in good health as the decades pass. So you got to think, every day you have to judge short-term John, medium-term John, long-term John, who am I optimizing for? Generally speaking, it's good to, especially if you're younger, to delay some gratification and think about your future self.
The delaying of gratification is really,
That's the superpower.
That's a superpower.
That's really the main thing in life. If you
I think that's what we can do differently from, I guess, from other animals. Really, like what humans can do really is to say, okay, I'm gonna delay my gratification.
It's the people I know, like self-discipline and delaying gratification is the same thing. But if you're self-disciplined, that means you can
control when you
control your
need
urges.
to,
Let's say it's the main trick actually in life.
Control urges.
To study now instead of saying I'm going to do it tomorrow, to run now instead of doing it later, to work now instead of saying no, to eat your vegetables instead of eating sugar.
True.
Classic, simple, but it works.
It does, yeah. Because if I have a task that I know I'll have to do at some point in my life, I could just do it now. It does make sense. And then we're doing it.
Do it now.
Because I have to do it at some point. Right?
Exactly.
But then other people are, but I don't know, maybe it'll change in the future, so maybe it'll not become relevant anymore, so I shouldn't have done it. But I don't think there's anything to lose by just engage with this as soon as possible.
Exactly. But it's a hard thing to do, especially if your environment encourages you not to live like that. I always thought, for example, a place like Los Angeles is a very difficult place to live for people, because it's a city where there's a constant encouragement to have short-term fun.
Sure. So is that what Denmark is better in some way? Is it more boring here, is that what you're saying?
Well, definitely it's more boring. Which is good for long-term fun, I suppose.
Long-term John is going to be happy about that.
Exactly. So environment, very important. Mm-hmm. There's a, what's his name now? Completely forgotten. Nobel Prize winner, behavioral economist.
Daniel Kahneman.
That's the one.
Uh-huh.
From his studies, he's increasingly finding that people think discipline and self-motivation is a big influence, but actually, he says no, environment is probably the majority. And maybe environment is 80 over 90% of which determines your actions, So it's the classic stories, you're the average of the 5 people you spend time with. Or, depending on what city you live in the world, or, who you choose as your spouse, or where you go to school, where you work, all these influences, impact you. If all your friends, gym freaks, go to the gym every day, work out, chances are you'll start doing the same because the environment is pushing you in that direction. So everyone should get some gym freak friends.
Yeah. No, I think it's true. So, but it's good for us. If it's good for if you are able to then control your environment to some extent. That's also.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's for example, related to business. That's why a lot of tech people move to Silicon Valley, because they want to be surrounded by people trying to create multi-billion-dollar companies who are pushing at the extremes of business creation, technology development, in order to achieve, the seemingly impossible. That environment pushes you. If you're trying to do the same thing in Timbuktu, it's harder because you don't have that environment around you pushing you that way. That's why you always end up having these cities that have certain scenes. Washington, D.C., for example, it would be very good if you want to be involved in policy and lobbying and, of course, politics. Mm-hmm. Copenhagen is very good, for example, if you're in the shipping industry. Very good to be in Copenhagen relative to some other places.
Sure, but starting up a company in Denmark, in Copenhagen, is also quite easy, right? They're facilitated to make it quite easy to start.
Technically it's easy, but setting up the company is not the work. The work is getting customers and developing a product. And you have advantages in different places in the world, obviously. You're setting up a mining company, it's better to be in Australia than it is to be in Denmark, obviously.
That is true.
So
we do have some mining in Greenland.
Is that right?
No, I thought about a couple of days ago that there's really a lot of tourists in Copenhagen. This summer has been, I think, more than what I've kind of been used to.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's very nice for tourists. Some cities, I think it's Amsterdam and other cities, they're like protesting sometimes against tourists because it's completely, you cannot really live there. And so I think the great thing about Copenhagen is also that because of the environment, from a nature perspective, that it gets very cold and dark. so people don't want to stay here too long, right? They want to come for a bit, but then they're going to leave again. I kind of like that aspect of it.
Well, Denmark is a good little business. Maybe Danes will not refer to the country as a business, but they've got very good marketing attracting people here. The people generally have a good reputation when you meet them face to face outside of Denmark. It's a very it's a country with generally a good international image, minus the Mohammed scandal. But that was some years ago.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, but I still remember it. So
Really?
I'm sure others do.
I hope we're not gonna resurrect it now. By I actually have forgotten about that scandal. Okay.
But no, increasingly, of course, Denmark does have an anti-Islamic international image. It's a problem for the country long term, I think.
It is a bit concerning that.
I mean, you can have worse problems like having no money in your country. I mean, there's worse problems, but that is obviously a problem. Maybe talented people of Islamic descent will not come to Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a problem because you won't have, talented people wanting to do interesting things here. It's a missed opportunity for the country.
If you look like a bit into the future now, we've been talking about future John. So this question if you look 20 years into the future, if you're standing in the future, looking back at the 20 years you've been living, what do you think that you would have wished that you had done more of?
It's easy that I think about these questions pretty often, so I have the answers pretty close to hand. 20 years from now, I probably would have wished that I would be in better contact and communication with my friends. I think as people get older, they tend to lose friends because they just don't spend as much time with them. They're at work, they're with their families. And so some of those bonds of friendship start to wither away. So I'm sure that's probably one thing I might end up. But now I'm thinking about it now, maybe not, I can avoid it. There's always things that you can't see, so who knows what those are.
But can you avoid it because you know it? Because if we go back to the Daniel Kahneman, something I really like from his finding is that he says that, knowing all these things about his how biased he is from cognitive perspective, then he's being asked, so are you now, less biased? It's like, no, I'm exactly the same bias. I'm just aware of it now, but I'm not, you can't change it in a sense. So.
Exactly. So I could be aware of it, but not really do anything about it. What else am I likely to wish I had done differently? I don't think I got. Because I contemplate these subjects quite often, I can't really think of that many. That's just the obvious one, which is friends.
So the friends aspect, is that a lack of time, really? Or lack of...
Oh, it's priorities. You end up prioritizing your family, your work, your health. And then there's not much time left over.
Because I think this is a general topic that people would say, I wish that I had spend more time with friends or been better keeping contact with the friends. It seems like it'd be a general issue.
I think that happens to all people, especially when they get married, have children. If they have multiple children, they have less time, maybe less energy as well. Maybe they have friends who are around the world as well. So it's not like they're 5 minutes down the road, they can just go and see them. So yeah, I think it's a normal thing, but it's priority. At the end of the day, people will tend to prioritize
what they want to do,
their family and their work and their own health, overseeing their friends, and I think that's pretty normal. Yeah.
Do you think it's going to? Have you contemplated about? Because I recently listened to podcasts with Ray Kurzweil, and he makes a lot of really daring claims, I would say. A lot of it, what he's been saying will come true. So he's not been completely off. He is convinced, I think he says within the 20 years, that like UBI, universal basic income, that everybody will get a certain amount of money, will be like a
normal thing, yeah.
For everybody. We have, of course, this, if you look at in Denmark, we have sort of a version of like basic income.
But that's still very much tied to unemployment. I think they will have to. There's a great professor at Columbia Business School called Bruce Greenwald. He's been talking about this idea increasingly that, and this is fascinating, everyone should YouTube him and watch some of his videos, although it's quite academic and wonkish. He's got this idea that essentially work doesn't pay. That's the reality we're coming. Because of automation, work doesn't pay. And what the average person around the world wants to do is have enough money to have a family and take care of them, protect them. And if work cannot give individuals enough money to do that, they'll be out in the streets, because if there's no family formation, that's the end of the species pretty much, right? Or at least no, comfortable family formation, that's the end of the species. So therefore, governments will have to do a kind of what he calls an earned income benefit, which means if you work 100 hours a year, you get this top up. If you work 200 hours a year, you get that top up. Something along those lines. So everyone will have enough to at least take care of a family, to raise a family, to take care of a family. So it's, so the benefit there is linked to, kind of how much you work. So people who maybe even, work just a few hours can get a top up. That's the idea that's coming out, which I think is more likely to work. I think UBI, you just get a check in the mail every month. I think people will be too scared to do that because it ruins the incentive of work, which is very powerful. I think it has to be a top-up type structure.
Can you elaborate on that top-up? What do you mean? So if you work 5, you get this amount. If you work 10, you get this amount. Exactly, is that how it works? Yeah. So directly linked to how much time you put into it?
Well, not necessarily. So if you work 1, you might get 9 top-up. And if you work 9, you might just get 1 top-up. So
what determines the top you're going to get?
Based on how many hours you can work. And the opportunities available to you. So somehow they need to find a way to link it to work. So the money you get has to be linked to work. So you can't get it for doing nothing. There might be some unemployment benefit, sure, if there's no jobs available, but it needs to be set up structurally, incentive-wise, to encourage people to work.
So nobody will get money for not doing anything. They need to do something.
Maybe for a short period until they find a job, and maybe it'll be a small amount, but you'll be incentivized to work.
Because he believes that at some point, all the work we're doing now to generate value will be taken over by automation. So we don't need to really do anything.
The theory, yeah, exactly. And so the theory goes like this. I'll try and do it briefly and quickly. So before World War II, the way humans worked was primarily on the field in agriculture. But what happened is that agriculture got much more efficient, and there was actually less need to have people on the farms because, we had automated tools now, started using tractors and such forth. So now we could produce much more food than was actually needed. So that doesn't make sense. So then you lay off some people because you don't need them. Around that time is when World War II started, which is convenient. So then we put people from the fields to the factories. So then we started having this whole centralized factory, these huge companies like Ford Motor Company or GM, creating all these goods and services that we came to love and need, like cars, fridges and such. But now we've gone through another technological shift, which is the digital age, automation, AI, which means that now we don't even need people in the factories anymore because now we can just have robots doing it. So what's happened now? The reality is what happened now that people have now moved from the factories to offices. So what's happened is that now increasingly our economy is a service-based. People work in advertising or in healthcare or they're a teacher and such forth. Now the problem with this system of service work is that it's easier to pick out stars. So it's easier to tell who is a great basketball player than a worse one. It's easier to say who's a great lawyer than a bad one. It's easier to say who's a great teacher than a worse one. It's easier to say who's a great police officer than a bad police officer. In the factory, you couldn't tell if the one guy putting on the bolt on the car was better than another guy putting on the headlight. It was a collective effort. Mm-hmm. But making manufactured goods is much more of a collective effort than service work. Service work is much more individual based.
Yes.
So what happens in that system is that stars end up getting paid much more than everyone else. It's not like in the factory, nearly everyone gets paid the same, everyone on the factory floor. But not all lawyers are paid the same. There's some lawyers earn 1,000 times other lawyers. But there's no factory work that earns 1,000 times, than another factory worker on the same floor. That doesn't exist. And so as a result, what's going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of people, maybe as much as 80% of the population, that basically work won't pay. Because all the rewards will go to the top 20%, the top 10%, who take advantage of technology, who are just better at their jobs for various reasons, or better connected or whatever. And then we're going to have to do something about the 80%, 90% of people where work doesn't pay. And it's because of this technological transition. And I buy the philosophy. I see it more and more. Mm-hmm. We are definitely moving to service work, and service work, people don't get paid, relatively the same in service work. There are always stars. There's always people who earn much more than the average, unlike the factories. In the old days in the factories, the CEO earned about 13 times the average factory floor worker, 13 times. Today, the average CEO, I think, earns 300 times the average.
So what it basically does, the system is just that it creates a bigger divide between people.
Yeah, the rules just go to the people who are perceived to create more value. It's harder to do that when you're creating manufactured goods.
How does this play into the philosophy, Ben Greenfield, that there's going to be this earned income? Because then there should be a shift at some point where everything will be automized, right? It's
not about everything being automated. I think it's more about the idea that work won't pay because the rewards will increasingly go to fewer and fewer people.
Okay.
Because those are the people who have the skills, the connections, the talent.
So there'll be a lot of people that is not able to have a job, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, we just don't need as many people to go.
Yeah.
Following on from this, his whole idea is there's 3 industries that he really likes for the long-term benefit of humanity. Actually, 2, I guess, is his main focus, which is healthcare and education. Because those are 2 industries where you could never have too many people, in the sense that you can always educate. We could get to the point where every child has one teacher. Mm-hmm. So we could 1,000x the whole education sector, right? There's no limit to how much you can educate people. In theory, people could be studying until they're 50. So it's this huge area for growth. And health, people in theory could always get healthier. So there's no limit. Unlike, you're not going to buy 10 TVs in your house. You're not going to buy 100 cars. There's limits to how much you can sell manufactured goods. There's no limit to what you can sell healthcare and the amount you can sell education. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is shift our mindset from, this physical good type capitalist, this physical good economic system that we have, and shift more to services like education and healthcare where there's no limits. And for our governments here in the West to, kickstart our economies and for them to grow, this is now where we start talking about fiscal stimulus. Instead of central banks, buying bonds, whatever, they should just print a bunch of money and say, you know what, we're going to hire 10,000 more teachers, and we're going to cut class sizes down from 25 kids to 10 kids, and we're going to do a massive building scheme and build 1,000 new schools across the country. That has a much better, I think, long-term impact on our economies than buying government bonds or corporate bonds in order to prop up asset prices. But we're not there yet. I think we have to get to the people in the streets. And then at some point, somewhere in the EU, in the US, I think we'll just do a massive spending stimulus to boost the economy. A bit like World War II, pretty much, which boosted Western economies after the Great Depression. But we're not there. I think people need more pain.
Maybe we'll have a World War III before that will happen.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so.
No, I hope not.
I hope not.
Well, there's something about war that of course, I guess war is. I haven't been in war. It's a horrible situation.
Thank God for that.
Well, but the people that are, and maybe that the people that are dissatisfied with the system and don't want to participate in the system and the hamster wheel of society, maybe war does alleviate that pain, at least.
Yeah, but it's a bad trade.
It is a bad trade in the long run.
A good way to get rid of my flu is to kill myself, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
It's a bad solution. I read about this because when you said education, we can always have more education. I read about this person said that. So he took a degree in something you call eskimonology, right? Studying the Inuits in Greenland. And then he was trying to get a job afterwards, but there wasn't really, his competences were not really needed anywhere. So the solution that he faced was simply he could take a PhD in eskimonology, because then you could become a teacher of it, and then you could teach other people about it as well. Right? So I guess, yeah, but then the massive education should more be because people like to be educated, or then it should be because people will enjoy it. Because in this situation where it doesn't really provide any added value or benefit, it should just be for the stimulus of it, that people want to be stimulated and learn new things and just educate for the education itself.
Yeah, I mean, education has many uses.
Sure.
I just know when I first started university a long time ago now, almost 15 years ago, about that. Educating to get a job was not really a main thrust. And for my sisters who are older than me, that was not like, studying the degree was, yeah, you wanted to get a job because you wanted to get a job. You need a job. But today it seems like a much more pressure on younger people to make sure that university pays economically. Like it's a financial investment. It's a time investment to get a job and get, to earn money. And it's not, we wasn't like that even, when I was studying, and I'm sure it wasn't like that even earlier. I think education has many uses. It doesn't just have to be, for the economic return.
No, it shouldn't be. I think it shouldn't be for the economic return.
I mean, obviously, it just needs to be a positive return in some way or the other. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial.
As long as you study something you like to do, I guess, because don't you think that you can find a way to kind of make a financial return on kind of anything if you just really dig into it and you just enjoy it enough? There'll be some way of making money.
Oh, if you're a resourceful person, there's no limits to what you can achieve. But the issue with the education universities, the problem is that employers use credentials from university to decide who they're going to hire.
Yeah.
Basically, employers have outsourced their hiring process to the admissions department of different universities around the world, which of course is dumb. But it's not dumb, it's just efficient. But the problem is that then encourages people to study degrees that might not be very useful.
But they look good.
But they look good because they've got the credential in order to get hired. Yeah. So of course, now this starts to sound like a Ponzi scheme, to be honest. And that's why this whole idea of giving universities the power to credential people is actually, I think, suboptimal long term. I don't even know why we need to study for 3-4 years and do masters. I think it's a waste of time. I think you could probably learn the essentials of what you need maybe for 1 year, 2 years after finishing high school. You need to learn, I think for many, of course, there's some scientific pursuits, medicine or certain careers, maybe even the law, where you need to spend more time. I think the law, maybe apprenticeship is even more useful than studying. So, yeah, I'm skeptical. The current system does not seem like the best way to get the most out of our people.
No, especially not the thing that you are producing this, like when you're writing master thesis, for example, or the bachelor thesis, and the grade you get there determines a lot the entire grade you're going to get, your entire GPA. But that paper you're writing there often has no link or real relevance to any sort of real world application. And only 2 people in the world are ever going to read it. but it's going to determine your GPA in the high way, and your GPA is going to determine the job you're going to get afterwards. And that seems also a bit off, because the master thesis and bachelor thesis is more about learning. You're more being based on how good you are at producing an academic paper. And the result of how good you are at producing an academic paper is going to give you the highest paying job.
It's BS, to be honest. The whole thing is backwards. And yet somehow people manage to convince themselves that this is how, does this make sense? You know, they talk about, well, it teaches you to think critically and do all these things. I'm like,
because that was going to be my that was going to be my critical point to what you said, is that in these professions where it's not about engineering specific, you don't need to learn these very technical fields, then maybe it is more about personal development than of a person. If you're able to really learn a lot about any subject, then you'll also be more able to quickly learn, you know, in any other subject. So it's more about how good you are at learning. You're learning to learn, is what a lot of people claim, at least.
I know. I still look at my degree and I think, how useful was that for me, really? And to be honest, it's not been pivotal. It's pivotal only because employers want a degree, but it's not. But the actual studying has not been important for the successes I've had.
So, are we going to see a future where? Because I'm just wondering if I'm to hire. Right now, I'm in the process of hiring people, and if somebody comes to me with an online degree that they have self-studied, even if it's MIT, right, but it's online, it's self-study, I also have that. Okay, it's probably not as real as if they was at the school and learned it in real life in a room with other students. But that also doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why that is the case?
That's just a bias that you have that will probably go off over time. There was a time when people thought having a bachelor's degree was fine for a job. Now they say, oh, now you need a master's. You know, there's probably been employers who said, we don't like this person because he's got a degree, because he's too academic, he's not practical enough to actually do it. You know, but the mentality is just, the narrative changes about degrees over time. At one point you might think, this guy's stupid. Why did he spend 3-4 years going abroad to this university when he could have just got the online degree? Yeah. So, you know,
he just spent half a year just learning these few courses that he needed to do.
Exactly.
And then he's on, you know?
Exactly. So it's just about the narrative that we tell about these things. At the moment, it's because there was a lot of, I think in the 90s or 2000s, some scandals about these online degrees. You could just pay, you know, there's still a bit of a taint, let's say, to some of these things. But also what's possible today is that it's easier to see someone's work than it was before. Let's say 20-30 years ago, it's hard to see, you know, before. But now you could, do a media plan for me if they're an advertising company, or you're an engineer, whatever, solve these problems for me. Or if you're...
But only the very tangible...
But what... Yeah, well, I mean, there's some things that's hard to prove your skills at. I know, clerical work maybe, or... You know, I think you can test for a lot of what's needed. I think the credentialing system from universities is on its way. Again, it's another monopoly, oligopoly that pretty much has to go by the wayside. It's not good. I think it's not good for the average student, I don't think.
No? To study?
It's good to study, but the university system, okay, let me take that back. No, that's not good for the average student. I don't think it's good for our society, actually, to continue to have the system that we have today.
Well, we do realize now that we're in a situation in Denmark where we are lacking at least the technical workforce, a less maybe academic workforce. So that's a huge problem we're facing right now. Because
there's many reasons for that. Maybe the country or the story that the country tells to its young people is not positive about technical fields. Also, you know, I saw a fantastic statistic about women studying engineering. And I realized, I think there's a percentage more women going to engineering in North African countries like Tunisia, Morocco and such, than they do in Scandinavian countries. And they were trying to posit, why is that? And the conclusion that the researcher came to is that engineering subjects are perceived as hard. They're harder, basically, than other subjects. And therefore, women in Scandinavia do not want to do the hard subject because they don't need to study a hard subject to have a good life. Why do something that's hard when I don't? Where women in North Africa know, if I have to study this difficult subject because that's the only way I'm going to feed my family, take care of my family. So again, it's the weird kind of situations we get ourselves into when it comes to university and studying and incentives. In Denmark, the lack of engineering talent then must be because the people are not encouraged to study these subjects. People are probably afraid of them because they're perceived as difficult. And they are difficult. It is more difficult for the average person to study mathematics than it is for them to study sociology, for example.
Sure.
It's bad for them at long term. They need the talent.
Yep. It's a big issue, at least we're facing now in hiring people. And I'm looking for technical workforce, and this is definitely a much smaller supply here in Denmark.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the government can come up with a plan in order to retrain people in technical fields. I mean, it's happening more and more. Like, for example, the online software development camps, and people can do all this online training and become a software developer in a year doing this course. And there's different loans and schemes. So there's a lot of people retraining to be software developers. I know a few who have done it.
And maybe that is why because if the assumption is that for the past many years, everybody have been doing master degrees that have not been that technical, right? And those jobs that you're getting afterwards, you cannot prove how good you are. It's about convincing somebody that you're able to do the job, and therefore a credential from university is more important. Because when I was getting my job at Ameris, and I was saying, well, I can start a local consulting department for you guys. It would be difficult for them to say, okay, just show me, just prove to us that you can do that, right? So in such a situation, I see the credentials being more important. For example, if it's software engineering, then people can more prove they are capable of doing it. And I do see that in those instances, it is less needed to have the credentials if you can just have the proven track record instead of proven in the moment that you can do it.
Yeah, of course, it depends on the job and the industry. I just don't think my main point I want to make from this segment is just that, is the current system getting the most out of our people? And I don't think so. Funneling people into 4 or 5 year degrees, people not graduating until they're 27, started changing degrees multiple times, having it being free or close to free, which means that maybe they're not incentivized to get the most out of it and thinking about returns and how they can be productive. Is that really good long term? I don't know. People like to criticize that people have to pay for university in the UK and the US, but it also makes sure that
they chose something that
that can be productive longer term. And education is not about fun necessarily. It's partly about fun, but it's not entirely about fun.
But your critique before was that when you studied, it was not about, okay, I'm studying this because then I know that I can get this paying job afterwards. But I do see that having to pay for your own degree, you need to think, okay, I'm going to take this huge debt. I need to make sure that I'm going to get a lot of the most money afterwards as well, so I can pay back the debt that I'm getting. So I think if you have to pay for your own study,
you have to find a good balance.
Pay for your own study creates a situation where people are being more, they have to think about, okay, I need to make money afterwards. Where maybe a free education more does that people want to just study what they like to do.
Yeah, well, you got to find a balance.
Sure.
The system I had, when I was studying in the UK, I think it was about £3,000 a year or something like that. And that was enough for you. But no, you didn't have the money yourself, being 18, obviously. If you couldn't afford it, you could get a loan, but the amount wasn't onerous. It's like leaving university and owing, I don't know what, 100,000 crowns.
It's annoying, but it's not the end of life.
But it's enough to make you think, okay, I got to pay this money back one day. Let me just think about the strategy. But it's not enough to say, I'm only going to do a degree that pays me the most money. It wasn't also that, and it wasn't free. So I could just change every year. I don't care what it is. I just do any random subject. I think you have to find the balance, right?
I like to work now, but I also like to study a lot. I think studying also had another part to it. But it's more this development aspect, I guess.
Studying needs to be separated from university. It's not the same. Like studying could be reading a magazine on the train home, you know, or talking to a friend, or listening to a podcast.
Attaining knowledge really is what it's about, right?
Exactly.
It's a love of knowledge.
I don't like this mental capture universities have on education or higher education. Education is not about university. Studying is not about university. University is a place you can go to do those things.
I feel that in primary school, I have an assumption that if you ask the average student in 5th grade or whatever, 6th grade, like, do you like school? My assumption is that most of them say it's dull, it's boring, I don't love it, right? So it becomes this thing you have to do. It's like you need to do it kind of against your will. I think that's a shame, because then it becomes this thing where attaining knowledge or educating, because education then becomes the equivalent of having to go to school every day.
Well, there's things you can do. This is again another complicated subject, but there's things you can do around that. One, I think the first thing to say is it's okay if children do not like going to school. Sometimes I don't like eating vegetables, but it's more important as an individual to learn that sometimes you have to do something you don't like for the greater good. We can't always be enjoying the ride. We can't always eat sugar.
It's a delay of gratification again, but it's difficult to teach.
But it's good. The earlier you learn it, the better. I'm happy I learned it at a young age. I'm happy my parents forced me to do my homework when I didn't want to do it, because now I know the value of delaying gratification. For those people who have parents who never push them to do that, who said, okay, if you don't want to study, forget about it. What lessons have they learned? Probably worse ones, to be honest.
I was not forced to do anything. That was obviously a lot of freedom in our house to...
And look how you turned out.
Well,
So, and then there's the whole culture about education. There's a wonderful book called Cleverlands. I encourage people to read it. And it looked at different education systems around the world. Canada, Singapore, China, Finland.
Finland is quite known for their education system, right?
Mm-hmm. And the story in Singapore is the hothouse. Singapore always scores very well on the ratings. So does South Korea. But it's the hothouse, of course, where the kids, they study like 10 hours a day at school. Maybe even more, 11 hours a day. Of course, the average Singaporean or South Korean is usually 3 years ahead in terms of, language and math than, the average Dane of the same age, because pretty much they put in more hours. But also because they have a culture where education is encouraged, and it's people say to their kids, why didn't you do as well as Lucas in the test? My son got an A. Why don't you study? The whole culture is about encouraging education. Whereas in a lot of Western countries, people think, if you get the top grade, you're a little bit embarrassed. You don't tell anyone. You're called a nerd. You're bullied.
Sure, I think the cool kids are not them that gets the best grades always.
Celebrated. Yeah, exactly. So our culture around academic excellence and performance, winning, being number one, I think we need to encourage that.
Is that the West in general? Is that the Yenta law that is?
The Western culture tends to believe more in talent rather than hard work. Mm-hmm. The Asian culture believes more in hard work rather than talent. And this is a problem for the West, because if John does well, it's because John's got a natural gift,
Yeah.
Which is obviously does not encourage people to work hard. Then they're like, I'm just not good at math. How many kids have you heard say that? I'm just not good at this. Well, no, you're not good at it because you haven't studied. That's why you're not good at it. It's not to do with any other natural talent. And that, of course, leads to suboptimal results. Of course, the Asian outcome, of course, is that, and of course, I'm generalizing here.
Sure.
It's not always the case. Results, of course, in people being pushed into things that maybe it's not their natural fit, and missed opportunities to be in areas where they could have excelled even further, given the opportunity. It becomes too conventional.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a wonderful book, Cleverlands.
Cleverlands?
Yeah.
It's about different education systems.
Exactly, yeah. For Finland, what was interesting was being a teacher is really celebrated. It's really hard to become a teacher in Finland. You have to do a lot of study. Some of the brightest people, many of the brightest people become teachers in Finland. It's a very high status career. I think like it was in most Western countries, maybe up until the 60s or 70s.
It used to be highly prestigious as well in Denmark if you're a teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so now I just think the brightest, hardest working, most intelligent people do not go into that field as much. So that's bad for children. The brightest, hardest working, smartest people I know, they work in finance because they want to make money. They do entrepreneurship because they want to make money. Or they work in maybe non-governmental services because they want to help people from around the world. You know, I don't think any of my friends who I know who did very well in school are teachers. Zero, in fact. I could say that none of them are teachers. So what does that tell you? Most people I know are teachers. They just didn't know what else to do. Yeah. I'm sorry to offend any teachers out there. Not good for our kids.
Not good for our kids. Well, I have another question I want to ask. I've stolen it though from one of my favorite podcasts, but I kind of like it. So
go ahead.
It goes.
Copying is good.
Well, copying is good, sure, and the question is also, can you produce any original content, or is everything that you're putting forward is just ideas, stuff you've heard before, listened to, and compiled, and now you're just putting it you in a new package? That's not my question. It was just an idea.
Well, everything is derivative. I like this story of the guy who, there was a doctor living in Paris. Was it the early 20th century or late 19th? Anyway, he was trying to figure out, why do infants keep dying at such, repeatedly at such a high infant mortality rate in his hospital? He had no idea. They was trying to figure it out. They were very confused. And this has been going on for many years. And one day he went for lunch, went to the zoo in Paris, and he noticed that some chickens had their newborn young underneath them to keep them warm. And he realized, hold on, that's an idea. Maybe why don't we put children in what we now call incubators? So soon after they're born, we can keep them warm in a kind of protected environment so they can develop their own systems and immune system, especially if they're born prematurely and such. And so he developed and created the incubator. So was that his idea? Maybe he stole it from the chickens. But everything is pretty derivative.
I had this idea when I was playing a board game in Danish. It's called Besserwisser, where it's mainly about your knowledge about any subject, right? And then you're being kind of like, if you're really good at it, it means that because you're very intelligent, because you have a lot of knowledge about different subjects. And then I thought, well, if I took all the answers and I read all the answers, right? So I studied only the game itself, and I remember all the knowledge here, and then I would be able to answer all the questions. Would that be different from if I had gained all this knowledge from all different contexts of life? Would I then be more intelligent in that sense? Why is there a difference between where I have achieved the knowledge and then me delivering the knowledge again?
Yeah, there shouldn't be a difference. But that's a very interesting thing you're opening up here, because then you start to ask about what is intelligence. Of course, is it just repetition and knowledge? And, is it just remembering information? And
some education systems are built on that. How good you are at remembering knowledge and then portray it again in a different way.
That's true. I mean, of course, it's useful to retrieve information.
Sure.
I can't remember the second law of thermodynamics. Maybe I should. But I know I can look it up in 5 seconds. Though.
Yeah. We can do that with a new neural link, right? That Elon is creating, which is mainly just a big database in your brain, so you can access all information at one point without having to look at your phone. And then you just retrieve it.
I don't know, what is intelligence? I'm trying to think of people who I think, increasingly I just think intelligence is people's ability to work on a hard problem consistently, focus without getting distracted. I think actually that's much more useful than nearly any other type of intelligence. Because knowledge you can just get out on Wikipedia very easily, or look in a book, or speak to a friend.
Social intelligence, like emotional intelligence, is really important. And increasingly more important.
That is important.
Especially if...
I think you learn that in the home, actually. I find friends, and this sounds a little bit silly, but friends I know who have grown up having dinners with their parents every night at the table, with guests coming around regularly. So they're used to having conversations, talking about subjects, interacting with different people in different situations, tend to be better than those who had the TV dinners.
Sure, but I think it makes sense. I can't have the same.
I mean, being socially intelligent probably comes from having lots of varied social experiences, right? If you haven't had many social experiences, it's probably quite hard, right?
I can't have the same, because it's learning, it's practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't have the same theory about. Sometimes when I look at a male, and that sounds like it's a study. When I look at a man and interacting or behaving with females, and I often think to myself, if that guy has been brought up with sisters or not, if he comes from home with other females, because sometimes I feel like I can really spot if a person is not used to that sort of interaction. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that, but environments impact us. Of course, the parents, tremendous impact in so many ways. I think about that a lot, how my parents have impacted me. Good and bad over the years of my childhood. You can go quite deep on that.
You can. Something the Stoics would claim is that there is not a free will in that aspect, because you're just born where you are, you're here, and whatever happens, and it's just part of nature.
That's partly true. But then it can lead to kind of a nihilistic conclusion, which is like, what's the point in life? I'm just going to die and no one cares about me, no one remembers me. What's the point? And let's just commit suicide, jump off the building. You can easily get into that conclusion. So, which is fine in the sense that it's a logical kind of end to the argument, I think.
If I'm going to die if I know that I'm going to die at some point, why delay that?
Well, just like, what's the point? Like, there's no point to anything really, because no one's going to remember I exist in a few generations. I mean, it's just it's all pointless pretty much.
It is, but I get something positive out of it though. Like I see that as a positive aspect, that we are going to die and that there is no point at all. So we just have to enjoy and get the most out of it while we're here.
That goes back to what I said earlier: fun and doing right by other people. The only things I can consistently see, at least in my life, that life is worth living for. Having good relationships with people, helping people, being good to people, and then having fun. That's pretty much it.
If life is pointless, it's about enjoying it while you're here, at least. Right? Okay. The question that I want to ask is that if we had the means to do it, should we make the T-Rex come to life?
Oh, good question. Yes, I think we should. Why not?
We should? Just for the fun of
it? For the science. If we can bring back T-Rex, maybe we can bring back Napoleon.
Napoleon? You'd like to bring back Napoleon? Would that be your first? Yeah. Well, then let me end it with the last question. If we could bring someone or something back, then what or who should that be?
For me personally, or for everyone in the world?
It's up to you.
Bring back anyone.
Sure.
Okay, per person.
Or T-Rex in that sense.
Okay. So not an artifact, not a bridge or something. The Notre Dame roof, bring it back.
I love that bridge. Have to have it back. Notre Dame roof. A lot of people would appreciate that.
I'm not quite sure what. There's a lot of fascinating things. The first person that came to my mind was Jesus, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know why, because I guess it's had such an impact on the human species.
When I asked the question, I was like, it would probably be Jesus, or Buddha or Muhammad.
Such a big impact on humanity. Why not meet the man, Jesus? See what he's got to say. It was just for me personally, maybe I would like to meet Martin Luther King. That would be pretty cool. There's lots of historical figures where it'd be fun just to understand their psyche. I talked about Napoleon. I'm sure a lot of people maybe would like to bring back Hitler too and speak to him and tell him how the world.
It would be interesting just to have a conversation with him to understand kind of.
People have changed the path of history. Stalin, Mao.
All the worst ones. And tell them how it really was going to go down. would be kind of funny to see if you could kind of convince one of those fanatics to kind of change their ways and make that like a project.
Maybe.
I once ventured into the Scientology church because I really hoped that, or I was just curious to see, could they convince me into to joining what their cause, because they couldn't though. But it was interesting still in the process to kind of understand what it is that drives them. So this understanding people that have a completely different perspective on life is always interesting. Being good or bad. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, I always say you can learn from everyone, good or bad stuff. So it's good to be. It's good to listen.
To have an open mind, no matter the person or the background, are kind of first just take in the communication, and then afterwards you can evaluate who the person is, what the person is. Just take it face value, which is what are they saying, what is that they want, and then
exactly.
Let that be the ending point of this conversation, I guess. Thank you, Mary, very much for wanting to come in and participate today,
Thanks,
John.
Lucas. It's been a pleasure to be on.